Our speaker today is Caleb, our senior minister, and I'm just going to invite him out. I hope he's ready. Today he's going to be sharing on basic Christianity, and this is something that he lives out well in his life. Thank you. Let's just give him a round of applause. Let's welcome him, his first real sermon.
Thank you. Hasn't Leanne done a great job today? If you've been around for a while, you can see that we're doing things a tiny bit differently, and Leanne was thrown in the deep end this morning to just change things up a little bit, and also Andrew was obviously brought on board to mess things up a bit as well. You will be vacuuming that after the service. It's so awesome to be back at church. We had a couple of light Sundays the last 2 weeks, and then today we're back on a little bit more like normal. I know that for a lot of us, we're a little bit back in 2019. Who feels a bit back in 2019 when it comes to church? It's like that's the last time you were kind of in a church rhythm. We never really got going in 2020, and then all of a sudden we're at the end of January 2021. So I was just talking to the pastor from another local church called Fire Church down the road yesterday, because his daughter had a birthday and my daughter went to the party, and he's a great guy, and he was saying just how weird it is as well, struggling to get people to volunteer to help at church, struggling to get people to come back. Everyone's a little bit foggy about church, about life, about, I don't know how you were, going back to work the last couple of weeks. It all feels a bit weird being a little bit out of routine, but things will start to fall back into place, and I'm very excited to be with you this morning. So what do you say as the senior minister on the first Sunday, kind of back since really 2019 almost? Everyone's kind of waiting to hear. I know lots of you have beautiful, lovely hearts, but I know lots of you will naturally, like any human being, come to listen today to see what is going to be said. What are we going to do, Pastor Caleb? What is this all about, this church? Where are we going to go? You know, and it was a big thing for me preparing this week. I probably never spent so much time preparing for a sermon. What does everyone want to hear? What's going to make people love Jesus more? What's going to make people go to their life groups this week? And all these things go through your head as a senior minister. Is anyone going to come back after this huge break we've had in 2020? But I really felt God say to me, just preach about the basics of Christianity. Let's get back to the fundamentals, back to the simple things, back to the basics of why we're actually here, why anyone believes in Jesus. And also today I want to talk to you about why anybody who doesn't believe in Jesus would consider believing in Jesus. We have a blank slate right now. Unlike even most other states in Australia, Victoria had the biggest and the longest lockdown. And more than anyone, we had the biggest and the longest break in church activity. And during that time, we learnt things, didn't we? We learned things about ourselves. We learned things about what it means to pray and follow Jesus. We learned a lot of things about church community and what that means when there is no community around. But one of the big things that I learned during that time, and one of the things that became very obvious to me during that time, is that there is so much power in the basics of Christianity, and there's a lot of confusion in the complexities of Christianity. The basics keep us grounded. The peripheral things lead us to arguments, confusion, misunderstandings, and sometimes we forget the fundamentals. We as a family this week, or probably last week, going into this week, have returned to the fundamentals. Jed is going through toilet training. One of the most basic human functions is knowing how to go to the toilet. Now, many of you have probably forgot how to do it because it's just a natural thing that you do. But this week we've returned to the fundamentals of poos and wees. And I'm sorry to talk about this, and I know you're sitting there thinking, how is Pastor Caleb going to relate poos and wees to Jesus Christ somewhere in this message? But together we are going to get there, all right? I'm going to connect these two things today. And in order to train Jed, we had to buy a very special potty. This is not a cheap potty. This is a serious potty, all right? Toilet, poos and wees in here, There's none in there at the moment. To try and get our little boy, because we tried last year and we failed. He didn't really take to it. Both of our girls took about 3 days to be toilet trained. Jed, we tried for a month and it didn't work. So we got this special potty, and listen to this. Everyone be quiet for a moment. It flushes. It flushes on its own. You know what the funniest thing is about toilet training? I'm sure you've been there before as parents, but if you can't remember that, you've all been there before on your own. The little guy sits on there, goes to the toilet. He does his first wee. Pretty basic thing, do a little wee on the toilet. Between you and I, she hasn't done a poo yet, so we're 2 weeks into this thing. But then what happens, the parents come in, the first time he stands up, there's some yellow wee in there, and what happens? A party erupts. Oh my goodness, you did it! You did a wee, you did a wee! And Jed's jumping up and down, Mum and Dad are jumping up and down, Aurora and Evie's sisters, you did a wee, you did a wee! First thing Jed says, do I get a lollipop? Because when you're at the basics, you've got to try and put anything out there you can, chocolate, lollipops, anything, in order to get them to understand the basics. Why do you do this as a parent? Why do you go through the accidents? You know, for us at the moment, the accidents happen at night. After dinner time is when he tends to the other one, the number 2's release after dinner. And so every night in our home at the moment, it's keep an eye on Jed. We're all like a hawk, following Jed around the house. Last night, he ended up in his room on his own for 5 minutes. No one was with him. After dinner, I'm like running down the hallway. Jedediah, no, what are you doing? And he's in there playing with his cars. I walk into his room. What's that smell? Jed, I did it in my jocks. No, not a poop in your jocks. Oh, why are we having a fourth child? It breaks your heart a little bit, and you have to be careful, you know, because straight away you're like, what are you doing flipping poo in your jocks? Like, you've been doing it for 2 weeks, but teaching him the fundamentals. You know, if we teach him the fundamentals and the basics of toilet training, it's going to serve him really well later on in life. Trust me, if he knows how to go to the toilet, it's going to serve him well later on in life. The fundamentals, why are they so important? Why are the basics so important? The basics are critical in any area of life because success is built on the basics. The basics don't often bring success, but they lay a foundation for success. Let's talk about having a relationship with Jesus. The essentials, the basics of having a relationship with Jesus is talking to him, is having a friendship with him, is understanding a little bit about the Bible and that the nature of God and who Jesus Christ is revealed in the Bible. Coming to church, being part of a small group, elements like faith, love, grace, patience, trust, all of these things come out of a relationship with Jesus, and they form the fundamentals for other great things that God wants to do. Guess what happens if you lose the basics of your faith in Jesus Christ? Nothing great happens. Nothing powerful happens. You don't go anywhere with your church. You don't go anywhere with your calling in your life with God. Because the fundamentals of having faith in him and a friendship with him, we often forget the fundamentals, don't we? We often forget the essentials because they become second nature. Do you get into your car now and think through like you did when you were a learner? Ignition, seatbelt, seat adjust, mirrors. You don't do that anymore. Once you learn to drive and you get the basics down pat, sometimes you drive places and you can't even remember driving there because it becomes so second nature. But what happens when you forget the fundamentals in your driving? Smash! Car accident. Oh, and what do you do when you have a car accident? Idiot! Why am I driving so close behind this person? Why didn't blinker when I went around there? Stupid! You forget the basics and they cost you. The necessities of life are another example of basics. Shelter, food, nurture. These are the basic necessities of life. Without food, you die. Without shelter, your quality of life isn't very high. You might not have a house. A homeless person lives on the streets in a tent, maybe moves from one homeless shelter to the other. Maybe there is a roof over their head some nights. But if you're just straining to find a bed to sleep in every night, the quality of life is not going to be there. The successes of life, things like family and children and career, creating wealth, contributing back to society, they don't generally happen when every day you're just thinking, where am I going to sleep tonight? I've just got to get the basics covered. I've just got to find some food to eat. My sport always growing up was soccer. And the fundamental, most basic point of being a soccer player is being able to trap the ball when it comes to you. It's very, very simple, but actually it's quite a difficult technical skill. And it's the first thing you teach a 5-year-old, 6-year-old, 7-year-old for a long time, is when the ball comes to you, it might be flying at your head, it might be flying at your chest. Here, there's all different parts of the body, except your hands, that you can use to control the ball. But if you can't control the ball in soccer, it's a very, very frustrating game. Have you ever tried to play a sport and you can't do the basics? Catch, hit, trap the ball. In soccer, we call it having a good first touch. So when the ball comes to you, if my first time I touch the ball is good, then hopefully it'll land softly in front of me and I can do something with it. If it's a bad first touch, which is probably most of you guys out there if you tried to play, it'd probably bounce off your knee, you duck underneath it, it hits your foot and bounces to the opposition. It doesn't become very enjoyable if you don't have the fundamentals. Now, flip this on me for a second. Give me a guitar. Or a knife. Ask me to cut a cake. A kitchen duty. No idea. No idea. It's not going to be enjoyable if Pastor Caleb's up here trying to play guitar and lead us in worship. The essential thing here is get the basics right. Turn to your partner and say, get the basics right. Shout at your partner, get the basics right. And then tell the person next to you, if you get the basics right, you will enjoy the benefits. Turn to your partner again and say, don't forget the basics. You know, if someone's having a bit of a panic attack, or if one of my children is having a bit of a tantrum, what's the first thing that you say to someone? Breathe. Deep breaths. This happens about 14 times a day with Eva, my middle child. She's having a tantrum, she's crying, her world's falling apart. Just take a deep breath, Eva. Breathe. Someone's having a panic attack. Breathe. Do we know how to breathe? It's pretty basic. You don't even learn how to breathe. It's innate. But sometimes you just need to hear the simple things. You just need to return to the basics in order to reboot again. Now the basics of Christianity. In Matthew chapter 22, this is the story, Matthew is the story of Jesus written by the tax collector Matthew, who followed Jesus around for 3 years. And as he's recounting many stories about Jesus, he tells us this particular story where Jesus gives us the basics of Christianity. Hearing that Jesus had silenced the Sadducees, the Pharisees got together. One of them, an expert in the law, tested him with this question. Teacher, which is the greatest commandment in the law? Jesus replied, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the first and the greatest commandment. And the second is like it. Everyone say, is like it. Is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. All of the law, Jesus said, all of the law and the prophets hang on these two commandments. Love God, love others. Love God, love your neighbor. This is the basics, the fundamentals, the essentials, the necessities of Christianity. If you get these basics right, you will enjoy success in your life. If you get these basics right, you will particularly enjoy the successes that come with being a Christian as you love God and you love your neighbor. Now, the context of this story is interesting because the first century that Jesus lived in, the first century AD, was a very, very complex time. Aside from the Jews and Judaism, which I'm going to talk about in a moment, Jesus was a Jew, you had many factions in the Jewish religion. You had zealots. Jesus had a zealot in his discipleship group, didn't he? In the 12. They were the extreme ones who were like the modern day Zionists, you might say, who really believed in Israel. You had the Pharisees that we know about, the Sadducees. I mentioned both of them in this scripture. Many different factions within the Jewish faith. Aside from that, you had the Romans. The whole Roman Empire was ruling the world in the first century and was ruling Jerusalem when Jesus came. So there was a whole different ideology, a whole different culture, a military culture that was taking over the world. Underpinning the Roman culture, the military culture, you had the Greek culture. Now, the Romans had defeated the Greeks before Jesus had turned up about 100 years before, but you had Greek culture was everywhere. The Greek gods were widely understood. Greek art and literature was well known among the culture. It had all kinds of different things. Now, for the Jews, you had a very complex Jewish religion, and Jesus was born into this. Not just into this context or this epoch of history. Jesus was born a Jew. Now, a lawyer, an expert on the Jewish religion, comes to Jesus to try and stump him. This is an ultra intellect, a man with incredible experience in the law. Does anyone know a lawyer? Has anyone been around a lawyer? There's one right there, used to be one, ex-lawyer. They know rules, they know sub-rules, they know regulations, they know the essence of the rules, they know how to get around the rules, they understand how to use the rules, to put someone in prison. They know they know the law book. You look at the law book, it's huge. They know them off by heart. They know what they mean. They know where to find the answers. So this guy is an ultra intellect. He is an expert in complexity. And an expert in all the little nuances of the Jewish law. He knows it inside out. And he says to Jesus, which is the greatest commandment? Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the greatest commandment. And Jesus looks up at the crowd around him, and guess what? No one's shocked. Nobody's amazed. Everybody's nodding their head. A few people are smirking. Okay, love the Lord. Everyone knows it. This wasn't amazing. Every good Jew knew that God was first. It's the first commandment, isn't it? If you know anything about the Jewish law. Love the Lord your God with all your heart. It's the first commandment. Everybody's sitting there smirking. Okay, well, you're meant to be this amazing teacher. You think of the guys who this is their first day out. Well, go see that Jesus guy I've been hearing heaps about. Let's go hear him teach a little. We hear he's a phenomenal teacher, different to all the other Jewish teachers. And he tells us like the most basic, fundamental, rudimentary, boring bit. Love God. We get that. That's what it means to be a Jew. Like to love God. That's the whole challenge. Everyone's just nodding their head. Now, for the Jews, to love God meant to obey God. Everything about this Jewish religion was about obeying. Now, I'm not talking about you and me. I'm not talking about Christians here. I'm talking about Judaism. I'm talking about what the Christians call the Old Testament, the Hebrew Bible. Their Bible was built on this arrangement, this agreement. So you might have heard that we call it the Old Testament. You may have heard it called the Old Covenant. We call it old because for people who believe in Jesus, it's the old stuff, the old arrangement. We live now in a new arrangement that came through Jesus Christ. So the old arrangement was love the Lord your God with everything. Your mind, your body, your heart, your soul, your animals, your wife, your money, everything. Just love God, give it to God. How do you prove your love? How do you demonstrate this love? Obey all the commands. So the arrangement was this. You obey the commands, God will show favor on you. You do what God commands, you get all the good stuff, the blessings. You do everything that it says in the Old Testament, That's the law and the prophets there, right at the end of my verse I've shown you today. The law and the prophets, that's what it means. It means all the old stuff, the Hebrew Bible. Do all that stuff, then God's on your side. Don't do that stuff, he's not on your side. Don't do that stuff, no favor and blessing. Don't follow all those commands, you don't get the deal. The deal doesn't work out for you anymore. It's a God-centric deal. It's a God-first deal. You play your bit, you get blessed. You don't play your bit, you're off the team. So all the Jews are nodding. Okay, yeah, we got that. But then Jesus surprises them with his second statement. Jesus surprises them. They were not expecting this. Nobody was expecting a follow-up statement. They thought we were done, okay? I don't know what the lawyer was trying to do. I'm sure he had a lot more questions, if you know any lawyers. He definitely wasn't there to ask what's the greatest commandment. That was some kind of leading question, opening. I'm sure there was 59 questions to follow. But before he can talk, Jesus says, let me give you the second commandment. The second is like it. Everyone say like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. This is a surprise. No one expected this. Jesus has just changed us, switched us over to this new way called Christianity. Now it's not about jumping up and down and obeying God and all the commandments that are in the Old Testament. Now your love for God, is everyone listening? Your love for God will be measured through how you love others. Totally new, totally revolutionary. Nobody saw it coming. He joined two separate statements because it does talk about loving your neighbor or loving others in the Old Testament, the Hebrew Bible. He puts them together and he says the second one is like the first one. The first one is not superior to the second one. The first one is the same as the second one. The second one, love your neighbor, has the same authority as the first one. The first one's important. The second one's equally important. He puts them on the same level. That's what it means when he says it's like it. It has the same weight, the same importance, and the same authority. This is a very old Bible of mine because I haven't used a paper Bible for over a decade. Jesus says, all the law and the prophets hang on these two commandments. That's the law and the prophets. Can you see that? It's about 2 inches thick. That's the Hebrew Bible. So the first 5 books of the Bible, Genesis, Exodus, all those books, they're called the law. This was the expert in the law. The rest of the Bible is a bit of Jewish history and a whole bunch of prophets re-emphasizing the law. And then the New Testament is that little skinny bit there. But actually the New Testament and the real stuff, the new covenant, the stuff that Jesus said is actually picked up in the Gospels, which is about that big. And Matthew's version of what Jesus did, his gospel, is about that big. Jesus took it even smaller. He said, all of that is love God and love your neighbor. Welcome to the new relationship with God. Welcome to the fundamentals of this new thing we're going to call Christianity. No nuances, no complexity, no experts in the law, no difficulties, no challenges. Jesus took what was incredibly religious and complex and confusing and brought it all down to a hook, one hook. Everything hangs on this hook. Love God and love your neighbor. This is the new way. Every time you love someone else, you are actually loving God. He made the basics easy to remember. He made the basics easy to understand. And he made the basics totally unforgettable. You can remember them every day. You can know them every day. Get the basics right. And you will have success in life. You will enjoy the benefits. You will have a growing relationship with God. The basics are love God and love your neighbor. They're not sequenced. It's not love God, then love your neighbor. They're together. It's a 2-part single statement, and they are totally reliant on one another. They measure one another out. Loving your neighbor is proof, evidence that you love God. This is a new deal. Old deal, gone. We sang it today in the third song, you might have noticed, about loving God, and he took our sin away and all that stuff, because the old, this is the commands, if you follow them, you're blessed, was over when Jesus came. Jesus said, it's okay, you sin. Guess what? Sin's complex. Guess what? Religion's confusing. Guess what? Pressure to come to church, pressure to do this, pressure to think like that can be a burden. Jesus tried to bring us down to the basics. Now, I'm not saying that the basics is the only thing we do, because there's lots of other stuff. Jesus started basic, but then he built things pretty big. But it all starts with the fundamentals. Forget the fundamentals, you lose your faith. You forget God. You misunderstand why we come to church. Why read your Bible? Why pray? The only reason that you should be doing those things is because you want to love God, and you want to prove your love for God, not by obeying all the nuances of the law, but you want to prove your love God by loving your neighbor. The Jewish nuances of the law had got so complex it was ridiculous. So God's commands, they then built a whole bunch of other sub-commands around it. Things like this. A woman could not look in the mirror on the Sabbath, so Sunday morning, because she may look in the mirror and see a grey hair and pluck that hair. And if she plucks that hair, that would be considered working on the Sabbath. Now, I know that's a very funny first century thing, and no one would be vain enough to pluck a hair in this room. Not looking at anyone in particular. Baby, can you pluck this hair for me? That's why she married a tall husband, so you just pluck, pluck. I keep saying to her, though, there's too many, babe. You just got to let it go. Just let it come. Let it come. It's okay. Jews were not allowed to have a bath on a Sunday, because if they had a bath, they may spill water on the ground. And if they spilt water on the ground, then OH&S requirements would obviously mean you need to mop up that water, and mopping the water is considered work. And working on the Sabbath breaks the ultimate command of resting on the Sabbath. The laws, the commands, it stuffed everything. It cluttered up love God, love others. It cluttered up a true relationship with God, and Jesus came to declutter things and give us a new connection with our God. Jesus made things simple, clear, and basic, but it doesn't necessarily make it easy. It doesn't necessarily make it not confronting, and it doesn't necessarily give us a shortcut. Because now he puts what is seen, others, your neighbor, your family, right in front of you. When you love them, show grace to them, patience, build friendship with them, you avoid gossip, you avoid slander, you avoid criticism, judgment. All of these things now become the measure of how much you love God. Now, people criticize Christians and criticize the church because of their behavior at times. The thing is, your behavior matters not because you're trying to protect the brand of the church. Your behavior matters because in your behavior towards other people is how Jesus Christ himself said people would understand how much you love God, therefore how much God is real, therefore how he is true, therefore how he is for us. The question I want to ask you today, and I want to bring this morning into a bit of a prayer line so that you have the opportunity to come forward and actually spend a minute with God to really get this. The question I want to ask you today is, what does love, or what do the Christian basics require of me? What do the basics of love God and love your neighbor require of me? If you've read a bunch of the Bible, you may remember the story where Jesus explains what a neighbor is. It's called the Good Samaritan story. And it's a story about a beaten up man, a Jew, on the side of the road, and lots of good Jews step over him. He's too bloodied, he's too much trouble. But a Samaritan stops and helps this man out. Not only does he help him and help heal his wounds and help carry him to a hospital, but he pays for this man's health bills, hospital bills. Now, the Jews hated the Samaritans. The Samaritans were considered half-breeds. They were considered outsiders. They were considered almost there, but not quite there in the Jewish world. And Jesus said, this kind of stuff, when you look after someone who hates you, when you heal someone's wounds, who doesn't care for you, when you cross ethnic boundaries, geographical boundaries, friendship boundaries, the people I usually hang out with, the stuff that's easy to do. When you do that kind of stuff, that's really loving your neighbour. And when you do that kind of stuff, that is the evidence that you actually have a meaningful relationship with God. You know, I asked teenagers and young adults once in a meeting what they thought was the most unfair thing about being a Christian, the most difficult thing about being a Christian. And guess what they said? The rules, the stuff you can't do. My Christian parents say no. My youth leaders say I can't. All the stuff I'm not allowed to do. And then if I do that stuff, I'm labelled a sinner. I'm labelled as, I'm not allowed at church. All these kind of things. Many misconceptions, of course, as teenagers are trying to sort their stuff out. But I said to them, well, give me something more specific. Come on, what's the real thing that you really think's unfair? This won't surprise you at all. The whole sex thing. Sex before marriage. We can't fool around, can't kiss a girl, can't do that, can't do this. That's the thing that young people are concerned about. Everyone else is doing it. Why don't we get to do it? Now, the orientation of their concern is wrong. Guess what? And I want to really speak to you carefully this morning as young adults, as teenagers, as parents of teenagers, of parents that have children that will become teenagers. If we deliver to our children and the next generation a Christianity built on Old Testament paradigms, we're going to run into a lot of trouble, and our kids' childlike faith won't be robust enough to help them with real adult problems later on. It's all very cute when they're kids and they love Jesus, but are they building a faith as a teenager that's going to help them deal with real world issues? Because that's the time when we get challenged. Now, these kids were totally old covenant, law and the prophets orientated. Jesus didn't come and say, hey, let me break down the basics for you. It is the Jewish stuff. You've got to obey the laws and the rules and stuff, and if you do that, you'll be successful in life. No, he didn't. He came and he said, love your neighbour, look after the people around you, love even your enemies. It's like, whew, maybe this is simple, but it's not particularly easy. It's not complex, but man, it's confronting. He said, if you do that stuff, then you're loving God. I got teenage kids worried about the rules. Not having sex outside of marriage has got nothing to do with following a rule or a regulation. It's got everything to do with what true love requires of you. True love requires of you to love your future marriage partner at 14, even if you've never met them and you don't know who you're going to marry. You love them now at 14 because love requires of you to honor them because you're going to be with them one day, not to be concerned about me now and being a fool around sexually. That's what love requires of you. Love requires of you not to build up a whole bunch, this is what I said to these teenagers, not to build up a whole bunch of sexual experiences to hand over to your partner one day. Love requires of you exclusivity. We all know that true love and the power of love is built on exclusivity. That's why when a man and a woman marry, adultery, cheating on your partner is very taboo in our culture because that's a Christian principle sitting under there. It's not about following a religious law book. It's about honoring the person that you're in a relationship with because love requires of you to say no to your sexual urges. The Bible doesn't require it of you. Love requires it of you. Your bunch of sexual misadventures that you one day give to your partner is not something that they say, thank you very much for this nuanced sexual history and all these partners you've had and telling me all about them. I really appreciate that. I feel loved. I feel honored. I feel respected. Thank you for sticking it out and showing me some patience. No one ever said that. Not having the bunch of sexual experiences built up does not come out of following rules that God put in the Old Testament. It comes out of a personal relationship with Jesus. This is what I teach our young people. If you want to give your partner something beautiful one day when you marry them, fall in love with Jesus and then honor your future partner by loving your neighbor, by doing unto others as you'd have them do unto you. By loving Jesus, you can love your neighbor. By loving your neighbor, it proves that you love Jesus. And then in doing that, love has required something of you. It's required you to say no to fooling around. It's required of you to be patient. It's required of you to love God. It's required of you to get accountability. You don't get accountability for your sexual stuff because Jesus says you should. You get accountability for your sexual stuff because love requires of you to honor others. The teenagers were there thinking, what about me? All my friends out there do stuff. Why do the church kids not get to do stuff? They're stuck in the Old Testament, thinking these rules are too hard. Well, we need to offer them relationship with Jesus Christ. The power of loving him will give you the power to honor others, and not to see you, but to see them, to see others. What do the Christian basics require of you? At a minimum, let me give you a couple of applications as we finish off here. At a minimum, these basics of love God and love your neighbor requires you to just love God. Maybe you're here today and you don't have a relationship with Jesus. Maybe you're here today and you're a post-Christian. Maybe you're a Christian kid who grew up in the church, but now your faith isn't really your version of your faith, because it's not the Jesus version of faith, but your version of your faith is not enough to help you with some real adult problems and some real world stuff that's going down. I'm not here to say, close your eyes to the real world and just lift your hands to Jesus. That's not going to work. But I'm encouraging you to get your version of Christianity more in line with Jesus' version of Christianity, because that will definitely help you get through real real adult problems. And maybe you're a post-Christian who had a faith and lost that faith. What does love require of you? These basics require of you. At least love God. Reach out to Jesus. Form a friendship with him. Put your cynicism, your skepticism, your hurt, your opinion of church people, put it aside and give Jesus a go. What does love require of you? I love this one, this scripture here, 1 John. It requires you to just love what's seen. Love basically what is right in front of you. Whoever claims to love God yet hates a brother or sister is a liar. This is the new basics of Christianity. If you love your neighbor, you love God. If you hate your neighbor, you're a liar that you're saying you're a Christian and you love God. It's pretty confronting, but it's right there, not my words. For whoever does not love their brother and sister whom they have seen cannot love God who they have not seen. The Jews for thousands of years until Jesus lived like this, looking at the clouds, trying to see God, trying to understand him, trying to obey him. And Jesus came and said, hey, there's a new arrangement. Now love what you can see. And by loving what you can see, you'll love what you can't see. Is this easy to remember? Love what's right in front of you. I can see my friends, I can see my workmate, I can see that lady at the cash register. Love what is seen and you'll love what is not seen. And finally, I wanted to put one in there for us as a church congregation, a little bit of an application point here. Love your church by using your gift. You know, I've been talking to lots of different people lately, graphic designers, music, worship people, people who want to preach and teach. People have gifts that they can use in the church. But so often our gifts, are encouraged in our culture. Use that gift to earn an income. Use that gift to get on some platform. Use that gift to get in a band. And maybe that's true, and that's fine. I'm not saying anything bad about that, of course. I use my gift of playing sport to have a soccer career and earn a bunch of money and enjoy myself and have different friends. And that's fine. Use your gift that God's given you. Some of us have gifts, however, that can be used here in the house of God. And you know what I've been saying to some of these people lately? This is a crazy thought, but maybe God gave you your gift just to glorify him. Not to make a friend, not to get on a band, not to earn some money, not to have some side hustle that brings you another income. Maybe, this is a crazy idea, maybe God gave you a gift just to bring glory to his name. No other reason, just to live for him, and that your gift shouts, there is a God. Your gift says, hey, let me bless you, my brothers and sisters in the house of God. Maybe it's actually that simple. Maybe God gave you a gift to serve your brothers and sisters. You've got gifts, you've got passions, you've got skills, business skills, work skills, things you've been educated in. Maybe God gave you those opportunities and gave you those things just to bring glory to his name. In 2021, we're going to kick off this year as a church, basic. Let's get back to the fundamentals, Southern Lights. Let's love the Lord our God with everything we've got, and let's just get better at loving our neighbour as ourselves. If we do those things, sin will fall off, confusion will fall off, religion will run for the hills, our issues in our marriage, our issues with our kids, our issues at work, Jesus will bring an answer. When your eyes are on him and your eyes are loving others, I guarantee you, if we get the basics right, everything else will take care of itself. As you come off the back of this word today, as you pray about it tomorrow, I want to encourage you and leave you with this question. If you're going to write anything down today, write this down. What do the basics require of me today, tomorrow, Tuesday? Maybe you can remember this potty. What do the fundamentals? That's your sin being flushed down the toilet. That poopy sin, that poopy religion. What do the fundamentals require of me today? As you wake up tomorrow, what do the basics of Christianity require of me today? I don't care about 2022. I don't care about some big thing you're to work out down the track. Jesus is there today. What do the basics require right now? What do they require tomorrow? What do they require on Tuesday? So we finish with a little bit of music here. I'm